Good, bad, fresh, rotten?
Ask the internet, and movies are always one thing or the other. But one person's trash is another's treasure.
And from award show darlings to cheap guilty pleasures, all roads lead to the discount shelf.
So pull up a chair and join us as we pan for gold. It's always worth a look on Bargain Bin Connoisseurs.
So this week, ended up checking out Suicide Squad, the new 2021 one.
Oh, man.
A lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I don't understand the internet's issue right now. It's this insane thing where, like, the critics score is amazing, the audience score is really good, and yet there's some random people on the internet who are outside of the mainstream media that are like, man, did you see how bad Suicide Squad bombed? And it's like, well, you know, it's on a streaming service, and it's a pandemic, so if you're just judging by box office, you didn't watch it. You clearly didn't watch it, because it's a fun movie. Like, it's
fun.
A lot of
it's
fun.
It's super fun. Yeah.
It's not perfect. Like, I'm not going to call it as good as Guardians, but I had a great time with it. I super enjoyed it.
Yeah, I haven't checked it
Yeah,
out
So,
yet.
Aaron,
Haven't checked
Aaron,
it
do
out.
not worry. Michael Rooker is in it.
Oh,
Don't worry.
I am well aware Michael Rooker's in it.
That's why everybody's stinging it, man. There's not enough Michael Rooker in it.
That's
That's
true.
the whole problem.
Yeah.
That's always true.
Yeah, right. Never enough Michael Rooker.
That's the problem right there. No, it is definitely really fun.
So, of course, you guys know, big fast head over here. Fast and Furious 9 introduces John Cena. And I'm here for the Cena blowout. Like, yeah, Cena can fucking do it. And I know he's in this he's in the Suicide Squad film, and he's getting his own spinoff on HBO Max as that character.
That's true.
So,
Oh, really?
yeah, and from
That'll
what
be
from what I
fun.
understand, he really has a good beefy part, and he really sells the hell out of it.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he's pretty solid in it.
So
Yeah,
he's
he's
just
got a lot of fun background in the comics too. So I'm excited. That makes, like, that character does that John Cena's playing. So that means him getting a spinoff totally makes sense, because there's a lot of story that they just don't have time to dig into in the movie.
Yep.
Sounds like that's what they're going for.
Yeah, I think it's going to
Yeah,
be
like
a
it's-
prequel to the movie of him just like
Yeah.
going on missions by himself. So
I think it's actually a sequel, but I'm not sure.
maybe I'm off.
But, like, it's one of those. I mean, it's hard to delve into that without getting too spoilery.
Yeah. There's some after credit stingers and there's some things happening. It's hard to say what's going on right now. But
Who can say? It could be any number of things.
Can say?
What I can say is Taika Waititi is in it for like 2 minutes, and they are the most heartwarming minutes of the entire film.
Yeah, ultimately.
we got our boy Lloyd Kaufman. He makes an appearance from what I understand. So I'm gonna have to
I mean,
have
it's
some
a James
eagle
Gunn
eyes.
movie. He's got to show up at some
Yeah.
point.
Gotta have some
Yeah,
eagle
yeah.
eyes to
And if-
find that
Yeah.
bargain bin royalty hanging out in the background. So
You also have your obligatory Sean Gunn cameo in it as well, because, like, of course he's in it at some point. His character is ridiculous, but it's like they use just the right amount of Sean Gunn in this one, in my opinion. I think it's, like, exactly where he needs to be for this movie in particular. I enjoyed it.
so Hans, you were there for some of this, but I did a witches themed night.
Oh, yeah.
And I checked out 1977's House, the Criterion Collection disc. Heard a lot about this movie. I know that the director was trying to make his version of a blockbuster. This was inspired somehow by Jaws to this crazy epic thing, but it's just a weird movie with a lot of experimental cutting and there's cuts and interesting things. It's very 77 Japanese cinema, and I don't know what else to say about it, but, like, I don't know what the fuck I watched, but I'm gonna watch it again on a night that I get home and I've had a few drinks and I can't go to bed, because it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. All I know is that there's a piano that eats someone, and they're not the Jaws character either. Like, they're not the shark. Like, but there is a piano that eats someone.
I guess there's a cat that might be the Jaws character, maybe. I don't know.
Nope, not even that. Like,
know.
I'm gonna be honest, had a hard time following it. I used to be quite the connoisseur of low-budget Japanese horror movies. This was way before the time period of which I was watching. I did not exactly follow what was happening, but
Not at all.
it was a fun movie to watch regardless. The super 70s effects happening Fucking loved them. They're a lot of fun. They're absolutely ridiculous and cheesy as all hell. And Ben, I think you'd probably enjoy it too. Like, it's not quite like Suitimation stuff.
Okay.
We're not doing that stuff, but it does have some. I don't know. There's something that it shares with that, and I can't put my finger on what it is exactly, but you'd probably dig it as well.
Yeah, I could get into that. That sounds fun.
On the heels of that, I picked another movie because I thought it was a witch movie, but it totally wasn't. It's brand new. It's 2021. It's called Seance. It's from our dude Simon Barrett, who did You're Next and The Guest. So like, we're both horror
nice.
boys. You know, me and Hans are both horror boys. I think you're just horror to the once power, Ben. But this is cool. This is a weird one. It kind of seems like it's gonna be. There's some supernatural stuff. There might be some slasher stuff. You know, and we know Simon Barrett really does slasher type stuff really well. So it does go from spooky.
Oh, yeah.
Like these,
Definitely.
these girls
As
are
an aficionado, I certainly feel that way. What's Hans? What's the slasher?
So the setting is like a small women's private kind of institution where they're, you know, higher education. I think it was college level, but it could have been high school, honestly. And yeah, people are getting murdered.
It was women's boarding school, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it was an all-girls boarding school. You're right. It's hard to say whether it was actually high school or college, because it definitely did have that problem of using actors slightly too old to play characters of the age that they were after. So it makes it a little bit difficult to place exactly
Man,
what we're
that's
talking
what I
about.
want.
I'm sure.
You know how there's all those like high school, you know, like movies or television shows with like 20-somethings as high schoolers? I want to see like college set films with a bunch of like 40-year-old actors playing the parts.
There you go.
Yeah.
Where it's
There you
just like
go.
everybody's kind of rocking that like a little bit of gray, you know, and just like acting like college kids. Like basically like old school, except we're dropping the old part. We're just pretending that they're just fresh out of
just school. But no, Seance, 2021. I think it's worth checking out. I had a really good time with it. The effects are good. It's shot really well, and you know, it's kind of a mystery. You don't really know what it's going to be. I will tell you this: if you're trying to program it in a witches' night, it has nothing to do with witches. So fuck me. I don't know what I was thinking.
it's not in that kind of night, but it was a fine closer for the evening, regardless.
Sure.
It worked out.
Yeah, might solve a mystery or rewrite history. That's fun. That's very fun. So I was gonna talk about Suicide Squad, but Hans kind of beat me to the punch on that. I guess all the cool kids are doing it. We're all watching. We're all watching that movie. Yeah, I've been scooped.
Hold on, guys. Pause. I haven't watched it yet. Pause. I'm gonna go watch it. I'll be back in 2.5 hours.
All right,
I'm
go
so
watch
sorry.
it.
Holy fuck, guys! You should have texted me earlier. That was so good. Oh, you're right. John Cena
man.
fucks, dude.
I know.
We've been
Oh,
recording
I know.
this whole time.
Let's go.
All
I
these
know.
good people have been waiting on
My
us.
God.
It's been
You know
We've
what?
got
Shift the
so
movie.
much
Shift the
to
movie.
cut
Let's
out.
cover that this time. Let's cover Suicide Squad. Let's go.
All right. Let's do it.
We'll have to get to that, but I guess since I can't really talk about, I mean, I could, but let's. I've been watching Stargate SG-1 recently. You know, it's a classic series, fun stuff. I love me some Canadian sci-fi, and it's definitely the Canadian sci-fi television series about the United States Air Force, of course.
Right,
and,
of course.
it's a great. It's one of those rare instances. Like, I like the movie a lot. Honestly, I like the cast of the show better, which feels like blasphemy when you're talking about the likes of Kurt fucking Russell, bargain bin royalty. But I don't know, man. Richard Dean Anderson in that part, super fun. You got, you know, MacGyver himself in the role, Christopher Judge, who the kids today may know as Kratos in God of War.
By kids today, he means me. I'm kids today that knows him as Kratos.
A lot of good stuff there. Yeah, it's a great show. You guys ever watch that? It's streaming on
Long time ago. It's been forever. I had a buddy growing up. Him and his dad were obsessed with like just sci-fi in general. And so I've seen a lot of SG-1.
Okay.
Couldn't tell you anything about it because I just saw random episodes here and
It's-
there, but I did see some back in the day.
It's not like transcendent like a Deep Space Nine or a Babylon 5, but it's one of those that is like perfect background television. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, where it's just one of those things. It's like, I'm going to eat lunch. Let's throw on some SG-1. It's so good for that. And it's got, you know, again, great characters, fun, kind of off the wall storytelling. It's worth checking out. So yeah, I've been enjoying that lately. And I mean, part of the fun is just you get a little something different every time. On the other side of that gate, there's all kinds of just incomprehensible images and wild trips. And speaking of wild trips, have we got a movie for you today?
That feels good. That feels good.
Right.
That feels really good.
That's the right transition. Well, everyone listening, tonight we are doing Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
You want me to go to Las Vegas at once? As your attorney, I advise you to rent a very fast car with no top. Tape recorder for special music. Get the hell out of LA for at least 48 hours.
We're all set. If I could just get you John Hancock, you're on your way.
Yeah.
Listen, you're going to be real careful with this car, right?
Oh, yeah, man. Let's give the boy a lift. We can't stop here. This is backcountry.
Damn, I never rode a convertible before.
Get out.
Hey, to the right.
I'm Hans.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Aaron.
Well, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Originally a novel from Hunter S. Thompson, 1971. I don't think it was actually a novel. I think it was originally serialized in a magazine. I don't remember which one.
That sounds
Which gives the novel a bit of a weird flavor. I was trying to finish it up before we got to this episode. Only got about halfway through. Is what it is. But the movie, what we're actually here to talk about this evening, this is one of those classics for me from back when I was in high school. I absolutely loved this movie. And most of the people that I knew around me loved this movie, although I was involved in some fairly shady scenes as well in high school, so it kind of checks out that those are the kind of people that would also enjoy this. But hey, it's a fun time. You've got Johnny Depp, you've got Benicio del Toro, who you will not recognize unless, I guess at this point everyone knows, but, first viewing, maybe
I
you
had
won't.
to do a double take there, honestly. It had been a while since I'd seen this. I remembered he was in it, but I didn't remember which part he played. And I was looking for it. I sat down and watched, and he is unrecognizable in that role. Like, he's in it a lot. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's really a testament to his talents. You really can't tell it's him.
Yeah, well, we're talking about Del Toro. I mean, he gained 40 pounds for the role, right? Like, it's pretty fucking wild.
Before Christian Bale made it cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like
Right.
it's not like 40 pounds, but still, I mean, and he improvises a lot of that shit, like licking the suitcase and like kind of just letting him chew scenery. I like the performances. I like his performance especially.
I'm just sitting over here like 40 pounds. I don't know. It's like, oh yeah, no, gaining and losing 40 pounds is easy. That's no big deal, guys, right? That's like, any of us can do that. You're not so hot, Benicio del Toro.
Well, I'm not saying that. I just know other people in Hollywood have taken that to an extreme, like Christian Bale.
It's
Even
true. It is true. Yeah.
Was it Rob? Whatever. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia guy. Like he has done that too as well. Like the idea of gaining a lot of weight, shredding it back down, like, and then getting and man, that is, you guys know I like lifting weights. I'm nowhere near a bodybuilding person, but anyone who uses their body for art like that, I always find that to be amazing. They're literally sculpting themselves to look a certain way and make dimensions.
Incredibly impressive. Like, talk about commitment to the craft. Like, you're really throwing your whole self into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Benicio del Toro in this one in particular, like we're talking about here, like 40 pounds doesn't sound like a lot, but if you notice him in his normal every day, he looks like he has a fairly slender frame. Like, he's got some muscle for sure, but his frame is slender. So 40 pounds on a small frame, that's a lot of fucking weight to put on and then take back off by the time they're, like, if you go and watch interviews for the movie, he's back to his normal weight, right? So, like, he put it on for the movie and lost it by the time it came out of post-production to start doing the actual press for it.
I have to think to gain that much weight, he's buying like half gallons of ice cream and then letting it melt and drinking it every night. Like, you've got to really, like, because your body, I don't even feel like you could in a short time gain that much weight without doing, because your body would just stop eating. You're like, don't eat anymore. So you almost have to drink the ice cream to put on that kind of that sugary fatty weight.
I have to imagine it's like protein shakes and ice cream and stuff like that you can just drink regardless of how your body feels about it.
So the movie opens with a quote by Don Johnson.
It's Samuel Johnson is the quote. He who makes a beast of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man.
That's what it opens with, baby. So for Benicio del Toro kind of being off the hinge and nuts, Johnny Depp straight is just doing like a Jim Carrey impersonation to me. Like, he feels like he's from The Grinch Stole Christmas. Like, everything he's doing is so Jim Carrey that I was like, what the fuck am I watching?
So I could definitely see what you mean. Like, for sure, it does have like, it feels like if Jim Carrey took on the role of someone. But to be fair, if you've seen Hunter S. Thompson and like how Johnny Depp got into like this role in the first place, he talked with Hunter S. Thompson for a long time, and then basically was like, hey, here's kind of what my interpretation of you is going to be. It's going to be this kind of extreme version of your already, like, your personality, this like really amplified version of it. And Hunter S. Thompson was basically like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude, do it.
So
like
I read that they became friends.
Weird,
like, I think that,
yes.
I think Thompson shaved Johnny Depp's head for this role. They were really tight, like, leading up to this. And he really enjoyed the way he performed it. For me, I don't know much about Hunter S. Thompson except for like drugs. That's what I associate with Hunter S. Thompson and this film, just the cover, that wacky cover. But for me, watching it, just not knowing, I was like, dope, this is The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, which did make it fun for me to watch. I was like, yeah, totally, it's Jim Carrey and The Grinch, dude.
Whatever it takes for you to enjoy it. No, so here's one of those big things around this movie, right, is that like you've got this really kind of wacky dialogue happening and all of that. That dialogue is really lifted out of the book because the thing that Hunter S. Thompson is most known for is gonzo journalism, right? He invented this style of journalism of like putting yourself in the middle of what you're covering.
Yeah.
And so with that, like the whole thing that this all came about from was, again, this magazine article, not an article, but a series he was doing in Rolling Stones, that eventually came together as Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I think it started with Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail. So like, even though all this feels so wacky and so heightened, I think it still probably has some grains of truth throughout it because, you know, you have a dude whacked out on a lot of fucking drugs and like this is his memory of his experiences.
That's the tricky thing here, is that this is very much one of those, like, the work itself was kind of semi-autobiographical, and so it's difficult to tell what's real and what's not, and to parse those lines. I mean, honestly, that's one of the more challenging and interesting things about a lot of Thompson's work. And to the point of that gonzo journalism, it's a very experiential thing. It's kind of journalism that just eschews completely claims of objectivity. You're hurling yourself fully into the subjective experience of a thing. Thompson famously at one point joined the Hells Angels just to write about the Hells Angels. So that's the kind of guy that he was. And this movie really kind of goes with that flow. This is about an experience, and to that end, I guess the next elephant in the room, like, it's impossible to talk about this without getting into just how Terry Gilliam as fuck the whole thing is, because it is a very Terry Gilliam movie.
Yeah. So that's, I gotta say, I really like the aesthetics of this movie, ultimately. Like, they're wacky and weird, and I don't think these kind of aesthetics work amazingly in any other kind of story. But a story about a bunch of dudes, or just two dudes on a bunch of drugs, these kind of insane, wacky aesthetics everywhere, everything kind of melting and not exactly making sense and clipping fast and all of that, it feels right for the story being told.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I don't want to say necessarily triggered, but I just found the whole glorification of getting real fucked up to be, again, it's this it looks like it's fun. It looks like it's fun. And I would say that all three of us here have been fucked up. We've all hung out with people who have been fucked up. I've had somebody at a party like pull a knife on me and it's not fun. It's fucking terrifying. And this is cool, dude. Also, Gonzo journalism, he should be riding a dirt bike in the dunes. That's what he should be doing. He should be competing in the race.
He tries to. The people who sent him out there told him he could get a bike, and then when he tried to go get the money for the bike from the LA office, they wouldn't give him the money for the bike. Although apparently he was trying to buy like a high-end, at the time, like $10,000 bike. So in like modern day terms, like a $60,000 bike or something. And it's like, why wouldn't they give it to me? I don't understand.
It's a bit
like,
of a rabbit.
he actually did try to go do exactly that.
It's very on brand. I mean, here's a bit of a rabbit hole then, to your point, Aaron. And I guess this is slightly tangential, but I feel in my bones this is what Hunter S. Thompson would want, is these sorts of tangents. So I think that there is obviously a conversation around depiction versus endorsement. And it has been argued in the past that there is no such thing as an anti-war movie because depicting war kind of glorifies it or makes it cool. Now, I personally disagree. That's a whole other conversation. I think that you can make a successful anti-war movie that doesn't necessarily make war look cool, and I think Stanley Kubrick pulled it off with Full Metal Jacket, which depicts war as long stretches of boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. But this movie, I think, you've got that, like, characters are having fun, there's parties and such, but I don't think it glorifies it at all. I think everybody is clearly, like, in over their heads. There is a careening, constant horror that, like, you never know if next moment is going to be the one where everything goes wrong and goes a little too far. And I think the state of the apartment in particular at the end of the film really shows, like, just the lingering images of the devastation, the aftermath of this incredible trip, to me kind of illustrates, even puts an exclamation point on, like, this is maybe not something anybody should be doing. And that's part of, as I read it, the point of the film. It's about embracing the experience, warts and all. Not only the highs of the trip, but like the aftermath and the effects on the people around you. And I think it does a good job of balancing that. I think it's one of the strengths of the movie for me.
Sure. Again, if we swap the title and we say Hunter S. Thompson's Big Adventure, a la like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, though, I feel like it's there, you know? And there's the lizard scene at the beginning. I was like, what? Yep, this is where we're at. There's lizards everywhere. Like, being too slow to make sentences, that's something I definitely have experienced when I've been over intoxicated and may have involved myself with something else, and then I'm out in public going slow, so slow. I hate myself. This is bad. You know, and again, it's like I guess the reminiscence, like a lot of times when I have gone too far, I always say flew too close to the sun. It does make a good story, so I do understand that. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about this movie I was just like, huh. And Hans, you don't have to dive into this, but I find it interesting because the last movie we watched that was about a drug-fueled crazy trip, it had aliens and weird probing and all kinds of crazy fun stuff. And that one, like, you were like, I don't like any of this. And I'm so fascinated that, like, I don't know, and maybe it's nostalgia, but I'm fascinated that this didn't make you feel weird.
It's timing between when I first... It's timing from when I first saw them. That movie, the one that we watched, Fried Berry, that is with all of this in retrospect. Like, my life experiences and then seeing that kind of movie feels different. Fear and Loathing is something that I experienced as a teenager in the midst of all of that, right? And I think kind of the other half of this too is that with Fear and Loathing, the first half of the movie, I would agree, is definitely glorifying the trip. And it's all about having this crazy, wacky, fun adventure and blah, blah, blah. But we hit a zenith at some point. We hit a peak. And then the other half of the movie is about when you've ran your fucking luck out and you're in the middle of North Las Vegas and here your lawyer is still fucking with the staff and the staff is now fucking terrified, right? Like, that scene is pretty fucking intense.
Things get tense in that hotel too.
Yeah. And you start seeing the other half of what's going on in these kind of moments, right? I don't think Fried Barry particularly does that part either. Like, it just is, here's a crazy time with an alien and a lot of drugs, and then it's just like, now I'm going home, I guess.
Well,
like,
and I think there's a rapid fire pace to this thing from the jump that takes, which I think is part of the genius of the way this is constructed, is that you get the rush before it flips and the horror starts setting in. Mm-hmm. So, like at the start of the movie, like you've got all those like, man, I don't know what the technical term is. I should know, and I don't. I apologize in advance. I'm gonna call them Varney swoops. Like you see a lot of them in like Jim Varney movies, you know, like Ernest Saves Christmas, where the camera just like whoom, just like whoosh right into the guy's face and all that. Like we're gonna call them Varney swoops. There are a lot of those in this. There's a lot of like tilts, a lot of Dutch angles, and it's off kilter from the jump, and it's fast, rapid fire jokes, rapid fire patter, lots of fun bits. God, I love Spider-Man. Jesus, which
Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. I was gonna
Tobey
say
Maguire.
old Spidey's in
cameos.
He is wild.
Yeah. The cameos are intense.
Yeah, like that is a super fun bit where it just like the terror on his face. Like he's just an innocent hitchhiker. He gets to this car. It's like, oh god, oh no. Like he is visibly terrified for his life.
Right.
It's such a great bit. One of the early, I think, scenes that illustrates the kind of that rapid fire pattern comedy to me is when they're renting the car and the dealer is like, you guys haven't been drinking, have you? And Del Toro like walks up, shoves like an empty beer can into his chest and jumps into the car. And
was it empty? I thought it was full. I thought he gave him beer.
Like
he gave him a beer.
Like he jumps in the car. They drive
there's
off.
Some beer time.
And the guy like he's screaming about his pen that they drove off with. Like that's what it they're obviously fucked up. Should not be driving. But he's like, hey, my pen. It's
But the speed of the comedy though is like even before that happens, he goes, "You boys haven't been drinking, have you?" Del Toro hands him the beer. Dr. Raoul's response is, no, not us. We're upstanding citizens. And then he jumps in the car and they speed off with the pin. It's like, it's all just rapid fire constantly because the just craziness of what's happening.
Yeah, all up through that. And then we get to the bit where they are booked in the hotel and all of a sudden Dr. Gonzo just flips on him. Like we have that tension where he's like, he's waving a knife around. Things are dangerous. It's scary. And I think it's meant to be scary. It's you hit that point where like, the fun bit of the high is kind of past, and now we're kind of skating into this, oh, Jesus, what's going on here phase, which, there's just, I think that's kind of masterful. I think it kind of rides this tone, and you are just along with it, like by the edge of your seat.
Like I that scene's so challenging because it is a scary scene. The dude has a knife. It's obviously he's like, I'm gonna leave. He leaves. He comes back. Dude's in the bathtub talking about killing himself.
Oh god,
right?
The bathtub scene.
And
that's
he
one
hits
of my
them
favorite...
with like a melon. Like he hits him with a melon. Like I'm gonna do it. Hits him with a melon. He's like, bah.
And that's one of my favorite lines in the movie. Is where he's got like the fucking shower rod and he's like, "Don't fuck with me, man. I am Ahab," and it's so great.
To be quite honest, I would rather just watch a Jim Varney film. That's the tone I'm going for, man. Because Ernest Scared Stupid is pretty scary too, and still fun.
Oh yeah.
I want to see Ernest topped up on mescaline. That's what I want. I want that movie.
There we go.
Never want that, unless he's Slinky Dog. If he's as Slinky Dog, I'll take it. Okay, real quick. Tobey Maguire, fucking cosplaying as Chop Top. Yep, that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. Dude, I'm just putting that into the listeners' ears. Like, you'll never watch Texas Chainsaw 2 the same way. You'll be like, no, is that Tobey Maguire or is that Chop Top?
Oh yeah, you've all like, okay, well now we just gotta dive head first into the cameos, right? So like we open, there's a Tobey Maguire super early in the movie, right? From there, you end up with, there is definitely, I'm not going to do these in any particular order because there's so many of them and I can't remember exactly where they all pop up, but like Cameron Diaz shows up for a little bit in this, who, she was a pretty big star at that point in time. You've got Penn Jillette that shows up in this. Tom Arnold is in here for a little bit. Like, the list just keeps going. Every corner you look around, there's another random cameo. And then obviously, probably the biggest but also smallest one, Hunter S. Thompson himself is later on in the movie. And then, of course, you've got Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like, it's just constant with the cameos in this movie. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea how Terry and Gilliam actually, like, was just like, hey, I'm adapting this. All you random stars, who wants to be in this movie for 5 seconds?
Yeah, I mean, so I got the list. So Christopher Maloney, Harry Dean Stanton, Troy Evans, Debbie Reynolds, Jeanette Goldstein, Bargain Bin royalty, obviously. Vern Troyer.
Yeah, he's in the circus.
Definitely, very definitely
Yeah,
Bargain
he's
Bin
in
royalty, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, there is a lot of odd, familiar faces you see.
Gary
and you go,
Busey. Fucking Gary Busey.
That's not a cameo. That's just a.
He's got an actual character.
He's just there.
And it's great.
He's just there. Oh, Gary. Hey Gary, we know Gary Busey listens, so hey Gary, thanks for your listening. He's a Patreon.
Yeah,
actually.
Gary,
If
you're out there, Gary, we appreciate your support, and tell Julia we're sorry.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, obviously. Yeah, I love Gary Busey. I don't know what to say about that. Ginger Dead Man, he's got me right here. Got me right here.
Yeah. So what I was saying though, Terry Gilliam, I have no idea how he did. Ben, you looked like you had something to say about that, the cameos.
Oh, no, not really. I mean, there's a lot of them, and they're all great. I mean, every little bit. There are a lot of actors who get meaty roles that only last a single scene in this, which is really fun. Like, yeah, Gary Busey is in this, but he's got that brief bit as the cop there, the like highway patrol. But it's a great scene. I also love the bit with the kind of the just burned out hotel clerk and all like these like, you know, like middle-aged police officer, like police chief types are like yelling at him in this hallway for this convention, and he's just over it. And we get that kind of like, it's not really a cutaway so much as like we just sort of see a glimpse into his mind for a moment, where there's that kind of self-satisfied, it's like, yeah, you know, you people have been fucking with me my entire life, and now it's my turn.
Yeah.
And it's such a great scene.
Yeah, that's Christopher Maloney, who anyone who's ever watched any SVU at all knows him. Any Law & Order, really. He's around in a lot.
And then, yeah.
Wet Hot American Summer as well. I mean, let's get
Wet Hot
his
American
credit.
Summer. Yeah. He has, so, again, I'm saying it now. We're inducting him. Christopher Maloney, Bargain Bin Hall of Fame. Obviously.
I
like,
hear
Bargain
the music
Bin royalty,
already.
Clearly.
Love him.
He's there. He's fantastic.
Delightful.
He is. Absolutely.
Sexual
and I love
icon.
him in this.
You know he fucks hard. We love him.
Oh,
Great
yeah.
guy.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And comfortable with his sexuality, playing an out gay man in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Awesome. I'm into everything happening here.
So, okay. There's a lot of Vietnam references in this. Is this just the time period, or is Gilliam trying to
very much
intercut
so.
something?
No.
Because I was so
1971.
It's
this
hard
is 71.
It's kind of impossible to talk about the film without talking about, to an extent, what it's about. One of the most famous things in the book is generally referred to as like the wave speech, and it is kind of this sweeping. I love the wave speech. I actually we can't fit it in here, but I did a bit where I parodied that. Like I argued that Scooby-Doo is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas for kids, and I had a Shaggy-centric parody of the wave speech that I'm very proud of. But I digress.
Like, for real, Scoob?
Yeah, no, really.
The mescaline's taking hold. I can't walk.
And then obviously that makes Gonzo Scoob, so Res your attorney.
Yeah, we
Keep going, Ben. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I might have to dig that up later. We'll see. Anyway, yeah, though. So the wave speech is one of the most famous things about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and that the crux of that, it is about the end of sort of this hippie era, the end of this countercultural moment in time, and Thompson's relationship to that specifically, his experience with that and what that felt like coming out of it and going forward into God knows what in this new age for American politics, American everything. And that is one of the core themes of the work, and it is very much here too. Like, they are one of the reasons, like, they're not just fucked up for the sake of being fucked up. This is kind of coming off of that countercultural wave. These are the dying breaths of the flower child moment in time, and that's beating at the heart of the book and the film alike. And so that's why there's so much talk about Vietnam and so much of that, and so much contrast with like police officers and authority figures too, is that it's very much a core theme of the work. So yeah, there is a bunch of that here for sure.
So I will say the drinking game for this is every time he says, "You goddamn hippies," like every time like that cadence comes out, you're like, you take a nice big draw of your drink if you're drinking a beer.
Off
you know,
the wall double feature here. One of my favorite spaghetti westerns of all time is Kioma. It is one of the last spaghetti westerns made in that era, starring Franco Nero, no less, of Django fame. And it is very much kind of like a dying breath of the spaghetti western. It is this weird, surreal, kind of trippy film that just the whole back end of the movie is just surreal visions of things that may or may not actually be happening. And I feel like it fits in fairly well with this thematically, because it is also very much a movie about the end of an era, a movie about what that feels like, and kind of the aftermath of it, kind of the start of the hangover or purge from like transitioning from one phase, one cycle of history to the next. So yeah, I think those would pair together really well. You heard it here first, folks. Watch Fear and Loathing, and then by the point you're drunk enough that you'll just be able to roll with the weird vibes, then dig into Kioma, and that's a good evening right there. I think I'd wager. Yeah, I reckon.
So yeah, there's a lot of like comedy gags in this. Like the intro, we have kind of a Where's Waldo-esque with them going back and forth, and there's like a Hare Krishna person. There's like another person like in the foreframe while they're going behind them. Right. They do that like 3 to 4 times. The beer, when he's actually going, he ends up in the thing with his beer in the motorcycle race. That's a funny slapstick gag where it's like the payoff at the end, he just dumps mud out of the beer and starts walking. Right. Which I did think he was going to be stuck in the desert, and that's what the story was going to be about. Not at all.
No, definitely not. Although, to be fair, he is stuck in the desert, but it's a different kind of desert. That's kind of the parallel being drawn here. But
again, is this a comedy? Is it what is this?
I think I would call it a dark comedy, ultimately. You know, or maybe, I don't like the phrase, but maybe a dramedy, maybe. But I think dark comedy is what this actually is, if you ask me. Because there's some fantastic humor in it. There's some really dark moments in it. But ultimately, it is, to me, it's a story that is all about, like, this is just the fucking journey that happened. It doesn't really have a start. It doesn't really have a destination. It just is what it is.
So, okay. I wrote this down, and I have no idea. Because, again, I just know Hunter S. Thompson from this film and his works and using drugs. That's what I am familiar with. I wrote down wealthy, irresponsible assholes, because it feels like this movie's praying that they have to have some kind of money, whether that's stipend from his journalism or his lawyer. What they have suitcases full of alcohol, full of booze, renting cars.
So
like what?
That's the whole point. Is that they're. I don't know about the lawyer himself, Dr. Gonzo, but at least Hunter S. Thompson, he's broke as fuck. That's the whole point. He's scamming shit on credit cards that he can't actually pay, getting sued for it. This is some stuff they talk about in the book, right?
Checked into the hotel under false identity, false press credentials.
He was literally given $300 to go cover the Mint 400, and they used all of that to go buy all their drugs, and then proceeded to go scam people on credit cards, checking in under false names, running out under the bill. And like, that's kind of the whole point where things start to turn and start to become more scary, right? Is that it's like, okay, we're doing all these things to keep chasing this high, but they're catching up with us now. Like, they aren't by any means rich. Don't get me wrong. At some point, Hunter S. Thompson did become wealthy enough and have enough notoriety that he bought a large plot of land and just kind of lived out his days till he decided he was done, which is a whole nother thing. That's another sad story for another time. But regardless, at this point in time, no. He talks even in the book that, like, he was spending his time in the late 60s and early 70s making on average it was like $32 a week or something like that. And even for 1971, that's nothing, right? Like, you can't live on that kind of money back then. And Sorry, not to shit all over that. I feel
I'm
like that's
glad.
what I just
I'm
did.
glad because I just didn't. Because he pulls up in a terrible looking car at first.
Right. The
But
Pinto.
again, his lawyer friend, to me, again, like, this movie could easily be reskinned as, like, frat boys whose parents have a lot of money going on spring break and getting fucked up in Vegas.
Could be.
Obviously,
but-
it's not that, but, like, to me,
Yeah.
some of the vibes, how disrespectful they are, the irresponsible use of drugs, like, it just
Mm-hmm.
feels like there are no consequences, which I think is what the movie's about. But I mean, at first, right? It's this fun
Right.
roller coaster of no consequences, and then the end. But even the end, again, I guess you get the story, and I guess you get the scene of him at the end just writing the story. So in the chaos and destruction, I don't know, man. Listen, I'm a simple man. Maybe I just don't get it. You know,
I'm not going to say
play
that you
some
don't
Leonard
get
Skinner
it.
in the background because that's all I got, baby.
I mean,
Just a
I think any
simple
reaction
baby.
here is fair. Like, this is one of those.
Right.
Part of the point of it is laying this experience out there. If it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of grotesque or off-putting to you, I think that's completely valid and part of the point.
Right.
And if it's intriguing
Absolutely.
and if you're curious about parts of it, I think that's part of it too. This is a, dare I say, multifaceted work, and I love it for that. I think I love a lot of Thompson's writing for that, and I think this
Right.
movie captures the spirit of that extremely well. To that end, Gilliam was such a good choice to adapt this. His style just suits this to a T, and I think you're not alone in terms of, like, this was not a successful film when it launched. Like, it's become iconic, it's become well loved afterwards, but this was kind of a flop, and it was kind of not loved critically. This was another one of those, as many classics, that it came out and there was kind of a collective, what the fuck is going on here, from the
Right.
general critic sphere.
Like, you pull out scenes from this, and there's some fantastic set pieces, some fantastic work. I don't know if that was CGI old Vegas that they shot, but that I found very intriguing, seeing the old Vegas billboards and stuff above the set. I don't know.
Yeah,
Roger
so-
Ebert, I'll give a little statement from him real quick, which usually we don't do this, but let's do a critic thing. He wrote, "A horrible mess of a movie, without shape, trajectory, or purpose. A one-joke movie, if it had one joke. The two characters wander witlessly past the bizarre backdrops of Las Vegas, some real, some hallucinated, all interchangeable while zonked out of their minds. Humor depends on attitude. Beyond a certain point, you don't have an attitude, you simply inhabit a state." And man, I'm not always on Ebert's side. This is one of the few times where me and my anti-horror critic boy over here line it up a little bit. That's
Yeah, I don't know if Ebert was strictly
I will say this.
anti-horror, but yeah.
Yeah, I will say this 100% though. I will have to watch this movie again because now I'm wondering if maybe I was in a weird mood or a weird space, or I was bringing some context to it.
maybe so,
Well, and I
you
think
know?
that's possible. I think this is one of those movies that you may not have the same reaction to it every time. You could love it and hate it and love it and hate it on alternative viewings.
Yeah.
Like, and every single time it'd be completely valid.
And
this is
I would even argue that that's absolutely true, because I definitely know, I remember rewatching this in college and being like, this movie is fucking dumb. Like, fun night with some mushrooms, obviously, like, yeah, let's watch Fear and Loathing, and I was like, this movie's fucking dumb. It's, why are we watching this? This is terrible, right? Like, but then cut to a few years later, I'm enjoying it again. It really, to me, I think state of mind around this movie will change your opinion on it on any given viewing, right? It's a lot like doing psychedelics themselves. What's your state of mind walking into them? That's what you're going to get out of them, right?
Yeah.
And now, that's not to say that, like, that makes this movie perfect or you should absolutely love it. Not saying that at all. It has its flaws. It has its problems. Absolutely. But I think state of mind is a big part of walking into this movie.
Well, and I think it's a complicated work too in terms of, like, okay, like, let's talk a bit about the bit with, like, Lucy, Christina Ricci's character, that gets picked up by
Yeah.
the lawyer guy. So this is kind of how this movie approaches things. When Raoul finds this situation, he realizes immediately, it's like, oh, yeah, no, this is bad. This is a problem waiting to happen. We got to get rid of her. And some of the stuff he says to his lawyer there is kind of fucked up, but, like, you can kind of see the gears turning. The movie does not hold your hand for that. It's like what he's doing is he is saying, if, like, out loud exactly, it's like he's making a case for the lawyer the way this guy thinks for why they need to get rid of her. But like, there's no inner monologue to say like, oh, he's doing a bit trying to puzzle this out while he's also just blasted off his ass. So you just kind of have to roll with it and kind of, but like, as it unspools, you can see the reasons like, oh no, he's telling this guy shit so they can get out of this mess and get rid of this girl before something bad happens. And it is not this is not a movie that gives you answers up front. So like, there are a lot of bits where characters may even come off worse than they actually are, because we aren't really always privy to all of the wheels turning at once. The characters themselves may not be, because a lot of stuff is just happening off the cuff. A lot of things are just fired off, like, God knows why. Like, there's just this naked wandering id that occupies this movie, and we do see that in bits like when they check in. Oh God, what is it? Bonzo's Circus or whatever, that they go in. They're walking through the turnstiles, and just like, out of nowhere, the non sequitur is like, "Dogs fuck the Pope, no fault of mine," and it's Bazooko's Circus.
Yeah. Real quick before we move on from that, Aaron, I did want to cut back. You were gonna say, bringing up state of mind, stuff like that. You said that you had one thing you wanted to talk about with it, real quick.
Oh, well, yeah. So it's funny, we're having this conversation. I just have some stuff pulled up over here on the side, because again, I usually just love films, and this one I'm very torn on, because I'm like, I don't know exactly what we have found out. Though Andrew Johnston, writing in Time Out New York, wrote, "Fear is really a Rorschach test of a movie. Some people will see it as a god-awful mess, rendered inaccessible by the stumbling handheld camera and Depp's nearly incomprehensible narration. Others will see a free-willing comedy, a thinking person's Cheech and Chong. It all depends on your mood, expectations, and state of mind," which feels good to see that and confirm that we're... Yeah, I think we're on to something.
Yeah,
because
no,
I really felt like I just didn't
in
get
the spirit of the thing. There's legitimately no animosity here. I would even go so far as to say, like, I don't think that you didn't get it at all. I think that this is one of those, like, any read on this thing, any read on this goddamn beautiful mess of a film is 100% valid, up to and including, well, loathing as it happens. So
right, and I agree with that sentiment quite a bit. But to jump back to where we were, sorry, Ben, this is going to make this rough to edit, and I apologize, but I'm jumping back to where you were. I just didn't want to leave Aaron's comment hanging. So, sorry. But, so, the other part of that, though, is that not having inner monologues and things like that. That not having those inner monologues from these characters, though, outside of Raoul's monologue, and even then being fairly limited, I think is so much in the spirit of what they're trying to capture around, like, gonzo journalism, right? Where it is being in the thick of it and experiencing it through this character, right? It's supposed to be vicarious from this character, and that's why even through a fucked up scene where he's saying these really fucked up things over to his attorney and all of that, you're never going to get a read on how Dr. Gonzo feels about this, right? You're only going to hear what Raoul needs, what he thinks he needs to do to solve this situation, because you're not supposed to know what Raoul is. Again, that whole thing about, like, they're not going to spoon feed you anything, you know? Like, I think that's an important piece to this movie. At least to me, it is.
There are, you know, I would agree very much. I think there are those occasional bits, and part of what makes this part of the secret sauce is that you can kind of root for them, even as bad as things get, because they're frequently, like, pulling one over on, like, authority figures, like screwing over massive hotel chains and a bunch of rich assholes exploiting people in Vegas, or getting one up on the cops or what have you. So, like, it's got that element to it. To that end, like, I do think one of the more explicit, like, there's kind of a clear way to feel is that conference where, like, they go and they sit down, they watch the presentation about, like, you know, the horrors of marijuana, and it's such a great bit there.
She'll have one hell of a trip.
Just like kind of like a very, like, on the nose Reefer Madness parody with that presentation.
Yeah. It's that moment is so cringy to, I think, most people, and it's portrayed so beautifully, right? Like, you don't have to have a lot of experiences like they have had to understand how fucking cringy that conversation that presentation is. You know, it's a fucking nightmare and I love it. It's the perfect bit of like, yeah, here are these two dudes that do not belong here, but again, gonzo journalism demands throwing yourself in the fucking thick of it, and there you are doing that, you know. I think it's a really fun scene for that.
So I'm gonna, hey, bold statements here on Bargain Bin, guys. Bold. I'm going bold. Gonzo journalism is just method acting. Like, and they're both like, you could just act, or you could just be a journalist. I don't think you need an excuse if you want to live that life, baby. Go live that life. I don't know if you need to say you're doing it for journalism. Like, hey, go join the Hells Angels, baby. Figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, like, I agree with the sentiment. I agree with the sentiment. I think you're correct there, Aaron. The only thing, though, is that, like, when you talk about, like, Hunter S. Thompson's book around the Hells Angels, the kind of journalism you would have gotten outside of what he was doing would have definitely been far more a study of it and someone else watching from the outside and trying to interview these people. Instead, if you genuinely not quite join, like, I don't think he ever became like a patched in member, but he was running with them for a long time when writing that book. You know, he's in there watching them at doing what they do, not just asking them to recall what they're willing to talk about, you know, and being able to write. Now, on the other side of it, famous moment there, he got confronted on a news program by the leaders of the Hells Angels, who rode in on a motorcycle and was like, he's a fucking pussy, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, and just like tore Hunter S. Thompson a new one over the book that he wrote. It was like, this isn't what it's really like, blah blah blah. And that's kind of that whole thing, though, as well, when you start hitting that gonzo journalism stuff. We talked about it earlier, Ben, you brought it up. It's hard to know what's real and what's not. Ultimately, that is a fair criticism of what Hunter S. Thompson did.
Are we the hotel staff and the credit cards? Are we the people that he's scamming now with his journalism?
We might, well,
oh no, he's a fucking genius.
Because he's dead.
He got us.
But, regardless, yeah, I don't know. I think we're probably coming close to wrapping this one.
Ooh, baby. I don't know.
Are we not? I'm ready to keep going.
I think so.
I got plenty to keep going on.
I'm at the end of my notes, but I mean, whatever, baby. I'll roll.
So, bringing this one back around, obviously, this is one of those classic movies for me. I obviously enjoy it quite a bit. And again, I would argue, given the mindset that you walk into the movie with, is what you're going to end up getting out of it. So walk into it with a good state of mind, willing to have some fun, willing to see some darker sides of things, and I think it's a really fun ride. That being said, I also grew up in Louisville, where Hunter S. Thompson is kind of royalty down there. Shout out to all my Louisville friends and everyone in Gordon. Love you all. But regardless, I think I'm somewhat predisposed to love this kind of shit. Regardless, because kind of growing up on the mythos of what is Hunter S. Thompson, it definitely puts it probably puts this movie in a very nostalgic frame for me. More so than it might need to, but regardless, I'm in 100% on this one.
Yeah, no, I will say this. If you're going to check out a drugsploitation film from 1998, you definitely should watch SLC Punk, Half Baked, or The Faculty. But if you need a fourth, Fear and Loathing it up, baby. Yeah, I don't know. Requiem for a Dream by Tim Burton. It's a thing. I will say this, just for the bargain binners out there, because they want to hear it. We can all agree Christopher Maloney fucks. So
that's
the
fair.
movie has that
Absolutely.
going for it.
Christopher Maloney does fuck.
So that is my my round table for Fear and Loathing.
Absolutely. I think this is a great film. I think it's an important work. I think even being made in the late 90s, it is a key work to understanding that point in time, that countercultural moment in American history and everything surrounding it. So, like, if you really want to get the thrust of that era, you need to see, like, A Hard Day's Night. You need to see Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and you need to be familiar with cartoons even, like Scooby-Doo. Because it's Fear and Loathing that describes the world of Scooby-Doo. Fear perpetuated by the darkened hearts irrevocably twisted through their loathing of a world that has cheated them, and spurred to stab at the faintest glimmer of hope when it appears. But hope is a green van promising mystery, and that, I think, is the crux of it all. The sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in the sense of military might. Shaggy has no need of this. His energy would simply prevail. Momentum is on his side, and he turns with his friends back to their mystery machine. There, at last, he finds he is riding the crest of a great wave. The dying days of the 60s, high and beautiful. There might come a day when Shaggy no longer needs Scooby-Doo, but that will be the day the wave has finally broken and rolled back. And I think once you're attuned to that spirit, you'll be ready for this thrill ride of a film.
Oh, man.
Hell yeah.
I gotta
what else to
say
about that.
11 out of 10.
say-
This movie fucks. That's my rating.
I would say, with the right set of eyes, you can sit up on top of that green van and see the high water mark. Regardless. Bravo, Ben. Bravo. I enjoyed it. But yeah. Ultimately, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking around.
See you later!
Bye.
And at last, it's time to go. But remember, friends,
This show is made possible by the love and support of listeners like you. Give us a follow and check out our Patreon.
And if you can't, hey, that's cool. Just tell a pal. So, adieu, goodbye, and adios.
we'll see you around the bargain bin.